if you break your leg, you go to the hospital, you're probably going to wear a cast. People sign that cast. People are like, oh, you broke your leg. Hopefully you're okay. What happened? Like, are you okay? Oh my God. And it's completely normalized. But if you have something wrong with you, and it's not even something wrong with you, I shouldn't even say that. But if you are experiencing depression or anxiety or anything that's going on internally, it's very difficult, and it's not normalized to talk about it. And I don't think that's right. So I wanted to make the end portion of each of my streams to talk a little bit about my journey. And if you guys want to talk about yours or your struggles or anything like that, feel free to post in chat. If you guys want to come on and do like a voice chat, I have a server set up, a Discord server. And you guys are more than welcome to join that if you like to talk about, we can bring your audio through and we can talk about that. I know it may be something that we'll have to build up to, but I do have that opportunity there. So, hey, how's it going? Good to see you, BlackBG420. We are just about to talk. I was just about to dive into my talk about my sobriety. So, my actual name is Thomas Greer. As I mentioned, I've been sober for almost 4 years now. Before, I wanted to sort of break up my story into multiple sections so we can talk a little bit about each portion of it. So I wanted to start at the very beginning when I started drinking. If you have any questions, just type them out and I can answer them as we go. I started drinking, I think, between grade 8 and grade 9. I don't remember the first time I ever had a drink, but it was pretty early. Like, I think some people drink earlier than that and some people start later, but for me, that's when I started. It was just at the end of junior high. I was a pretty good, like, it's grade 7 and 8. I was super anti going out or doing anything. Like, we were always out and hanging out with our friends, but I never really got into drinking, as I know some people started earlier. It started there, and it wasn't until I got into high school that I started drinking a lot more frequently. But again, it wasn't it was never an issue. You know, you're young, you have sorry, I still have music that has ads, so one sec. There we go. It was never something that I thought was an issue. And I sort of went through my initial years with drinking, as it not being a problem. Like high school, before high school, I was really into sports. I was really into, here, got my dog. And once I got to high school, I kind of had a choice of either going into sports and getting up early for practices and doing all of that stuff, or starting to party. And I started to drink with a group of friends that I had kind of known before high school. But then, it took off from there. Drinking all throughout high school. That was when I started getting into music and instruments. And we started playing in bands and playing shows, and sort of drinking goes hand in hand with that. And so for me at an early age, I think I really tied in drinking. And I think this is something that a lot of people do still, no matter what age you are, is you tie drinking in with status. And it becomes a part of who you, maybe not who you are, but who you want to be or who you want to portray yourself as. So, and I think as a young person starting to drink, it's the cool thing to do. It's really like, oh, we're going out to drink, we're going out. This isn't something you've ever done before. And that's how it kind of starts. But if as I was playing shows and in a band really early on, you sort of tie that part of you, alcohol, into your persona and who you show to other people. And I think that's really, like, looking deeply at my past, that's really where I started, drinking became more and more of a problem. High school was okay. After high school, after we graduated, I lived in a couple different apartments with varying degrees of, I moved out quite early. I think I was 17 or 18, against my mom's wishes. I definitely wasn't ready for it. And she knew I wasn't, but she was also a mom who let me do what I want and supported me through that. And honestly, I would much rather have a parent that let me make my mistakes and come back to her with what I've learned than to tell me not to do it, and then I had to do it anyways, and it was caused that rift. So I moved out very early into a house with a coworker. I worked at Safeway, and that coworker moved out pretty quick because we got a notice a week after I'd moved in saying that the place was going to be demolished. So I had about 3 more months to live there, and my bandmates moved in, and we had a very dirty place. 17-year-old kids living together was definitely interesting. There was never a point when there wasn't a party going on in our house. I would come home and try and go to bed, and it was a non-stop party. We never cleaned. It was filthy. It was disgusting. But again, that's where sort of drinking all the time came into play. And again, it never seemed like a problem because you can bounce back from hangovers. You don't have anything as a young adult that you really you're not responsible for. So it was pretty easy to just go by. After that, after high school, I sort of bounced around between jobs. And again, drinking was never a central focus for me. It was something that I always did. On the weekends you drink, you work your butt off during the week, and then on the weekends you drink. And as I got a little bit older and got out of the bands and things I were, and I moved into a bit nicer apartments, that was it switched a little bit. So it was still never an issue, but it was still a big part of my life. After a couple different apartments, I moved back in with my parents to sort of lick my wounds and just realize that we were down a pretty dark path. I definitely did drugs recreationally, but never did I ever get into them as nearly as other people did. I know some people that we were friends with at a really young age went to rehab, and it was really it was sad and scary, and I feel so blessed that I got out of that unscathed, and learned a hard lesson. After moving back in with my parents, I started to think about what I wanted to do, and I always promised my parents that I would go to college. And so that's when I decided that I wanted to go to college for video game design. I bounced around in a couple different programs in Calgary. I went to graphic design in SAIT, and then I did recording as well at I was at SAIT as well, but I never graduated. I kind of dropped out of both of those programs. And again, drinking was always a part of my life, but again, it never felt like an issue. I'm sort of recollecting. I haven't talked about this with a lot of people often or ever, except for the people that I experienced it with. So after I got accepted into the Art Institute of Vancouver, I started working a construction job to help pay off my college tuitions, and I moved out to Vancouver. I moved into the Residence for Art Institute, which was a terrible idea. It was an apartment building that was probably a half-hour walk away from the college itself. You had to take a bus. It wasn't even connected to the college. It was super expensive, and they crammed. It was like a 1.5 bedroom apartment that they put 5 of us in. So it was ridiculous. But we moved to Vancouver, and it was great. Drinking kind of stopped a little bit then for me because of the amount of work that I had to put into game design in school. Definitely a lot of late nights, definitely a lot of hard work and homework and projects and everything. So we drank on the weekends, and we still had fun, but it was never too big of a deal. Again, not a problem. I was still doing one of the things, throughout high school, despite I skipped a lot of class, I definitely partied a lot, and college still skipped quite a bit, but I always did quite well with grades, thankfully. I really lucked out in that regard, otherwise I don't think I would have passed anything. So college went fairly well, but I moved out of residence because it was so expensive and ridiculous, and I hated living there, so I moved into a giant house. And I would say that's definitely when drinking, I would say the start of my drinking took hold. Because we had I moved into a massive house with a bunch of friends. So we had like a 7-bedroom house in Burnaby with 2 kitchens, a massive front patio, a massive back patio, a big compound in the back. It was awesome, but we had parties so much. And again, that's where sort of that alcohol is a status thing came back. And we were the cool, like, well, maybe we weren't, but we felt like the cool kids on campus. And we felt like all of the kids wanted to come to our house to have parties. And so we kind of had to do that lifestyle. But at that time too, I started getting back into music with some friends. They needed a drummer for their band, and I played drums for quite a long time, so I was like, hey, I'll play. And so then that's when we started playing shows and everything again. I definitely didn't do as well in school at that time. Like there was a couple semesters when I didn't do very well. I still passed, but I didn't do very well. After college, I would say that's when I graduated and I got a job in game design. I was one of the few people who got a job in game design right off the bat. And it was going really well. Like I worked in Gastown at a cool startup. We made gamified websites. I talked a little bit about this when I was playing before. We made gamified websites and Facebook mobile games. Before really gaming on your phone was a thing. You kind of sort of played in the Facebook browser. So I worked on a Heartland Facebook mobile game as a quest designer and a bunch of different CBC shows that had like gamified websites. But at the same time, we were doing quite well with our band stuff. And we met a couple people, and eventually we got to meet a producer. We had a phone meeting with a producer in Los Angeles. His name was Mike Plotnikoff. So Mike Plotnikoff had actually he produced a lot of cool albums. Like he worked with Kiss, he worked with Aerosmith, Van Halen. Look him up if you have the chance. Mike Plotnikoff. I'll type his name in chat right now. So he was a big deal for us, and he said, you know what, let's sign a couple album deal, and let's get you down to LA and make some albums. So we hadn't signed with a recording company, but we signed with a producer. So he would make our album and then shop it to companies because he had connections, obviously. And so at that point, the game design career definitely took a backseat to that. I also started bartending 1 day a week. And I would say I was looking for a part-time job on top of game design. And I was walking along Granville Street, which is a main entertainment street in Vancouver. And I walked into the warehouse trying to apply for a job. If you guys don't know, if you've never been to the warehouse is it's a very small, sort of like a premium dive bar is what they call it. And it definitely has that feel of, it looks like a dive bar, but they still serve nice food. Everything is under $5. And they have really nice staff. So when I walked in there to try and apply for a job, the GM was actually out, but they said he would be back soon. And it took him like an hour to get back. And so I started having drinks and getting to know the bartender. And I never applied for a job there. I just started coming there every single night and getting drunk. And I think, again, going back to the whole like drinking is a status thing, this seemed like the next level of status for me. And so I tied drinking into like getting to know these people and being cool at the bar and being a regular, and people start to know you and they treat you nicely. I don't know if you guys have ever felt that going to a bar when you walk in and you feel like the bartender knows your name, or you meet someone that, like, you see someone that you've seen at the bar before and you have your spot at the bar and you kind of like, hey, thanks, Black BG. Yeah, right. It's a good feeling. And as a young kid, it's kind of addicting to feel that. And even not even as a young kid, growing into your adulthood, no matter where you go, working in hotels, it's the same thing. When a guest that travels a lot, we can see their information when they come in, and we say, "Oh, hello, Mr. Smith. Like, welcome back. I see your last day was this. We have your extra feather pillows already set up. We know your favorite meal is this, so we have one prepared for you. This and that and the other thing." People are impressed, and it feels like you are a big deal, and as rightfully so. So if you spend enough money at a bar or a restaurant, you should be known, and that feels good. But like learning that firsthand was very powerful for me. Eventually, it got to the point at the warehouse where I was there so much that they were like, I started talking. They're like, "Oh, well, you should bartend. Like, you're a fun guy." I had started helping them organize their events for the restaurant, and so I had a background in game design or graphic design, as I mentioned, like just a little bit. So I helped make their posters for the events and started thinking of the ideas and then promoting them. So they said, "Well, hey, we can teach you how to bartend one day a week." And that's actually how I got into bartending. Is just they offered me to train me on the job, teach me how to bartend one night a week. So I started doing Sunday day shifts at the warehouse. That was my first time bartending, and again, it was another elevation of that tying drinking to status, because now I wasn't the guy coming to the bar and drinking and people knew my name. I was the guy giving out the alcohol, and everybody knew who you were. And it's such a weird thing being in charge of the alcohol for people. Yeah, because it's such a big formative part of your late teens and 20s and 30s even. It can go as far as you want. But your 20s, definitely, when you stop having house parties and you stop hanging out in people's apartments and you actually are old enough to go out and drink and stuff in bars and restaurants, it's powerful. And being in charge of that alcohol, like being the guy, be like, "Hey, give me money and I'll get you drunk, and with a smile on my face, I'll know your name, I'll make you feel good about yourself, and I'll make you feel cool." And that's kind of your job, and I love that. And I think, as an aside, a lot of bartenders and stuff can kind of get jaded in the industry, where you're pretending to care about people for their money. And I'll talk a little bit about how I got to that point, because I did. But initially, I cared so much about every single person that came in. I wanted to be their friend genuinely. Every single person who wanted to drink from me, I made it the best drink I ever could in the most fun way possible. Because it was just so cool to meet new friends, and it was all based around drinking, which I thought was the best thing in the world. But that is sort of when I got into hard alcohol and binge drinking. And it's just part of being a bartender. The warehouse closed at 2:45. The warehouse closed at 2. We could count all of our money and do cash out by 2:45. And sorry, I'm just picking up my pups. Cash out by 2:45. And after that, we would run over to the Granville room, which was next door. Granville has a lot of bars on it. We'd run over to the Granville room, spend all of our tips, whether we made $300 or $400. Between $250 to $400 was pretty average for the warehouse in my time. We'd run over and spend all of our money. Waste all of our tips. You would just line up shots for yourself and for everybody, and you would drink and drink and drink and drink and drink. And you would have 15 minutes to drink. You could probably stay at like half an hour afterwards. As we got to know the people who worked at the Granville room, we would stay until 6, 7 in the morning. But yeah, that's when I really started to drink hard alcohol. And I think for a lot of people, that's the downfall, is once you start to get used to and have a tolerance for hard alcohol, alcohol can really fuck you over. I think people who if you can stick to beer your entire life, you probably won't be in nearly as bad of a situation. Yes, you can drink 12 beers and get just as drunk, but it's difficult to do that on a consistent basis. Because beer has so much more calories, and if you drink 12 beers, binge drinking every day, it is tough to do that. But with alcohol, vodka, low calories, low sugar, low carbs, you can slam it. So I started out one night a week at the warehouse, but eventually I moved it to 2. So I was working Monday to Fridays at the game design place. Saturdays, Sundays, I would bartend on top of playing shows interweekly. Like we played quite a bit of places in Vancouver. We played the Shark Club, we played the Roxy, we played Tunnel, which was a really cool place. Tunnel was a place that our band got sponsored, so we got paid to be there. So we would show up on Friday nights and they would have a table for us and just unlimited booze, and we just had to like just be ourselves, dressed in rock and roll clothing, tight pants, bandanas, and just be awesome. And again, that's alcohol is a status thing. Really made you feel cool, made us feel really cool. So eventually it just got to the point where I was playing like shows and bartending so much that I was like, I do not want to be a game designer anymore. The hospitality industry has I appreciate it so much for what it's done for me, and I want to do it full time. So I had to have that hard conversation with my parents. It's very difficult. And then I quit the game design industry off my first job, and I started bartending full time. And it was great. Yeah, money was great. It's the restaurant industry you can make a lot of money. And yeah, it's having access to a couple $100 cash every night in your pocket is weird when you're young. And then not only that, being able to get into any bar you want without having to pay cover, without having to wait in line, walking in and getting free shots. It just sort of sweeps you up, and it takes you for a ride, and it's so much fun. Yeah, I'm just gonna take a sip of water. It is so much fun, but it comes with costs. The hangovers started getting worse. My place started just being in such a state of disarray. It was always a mess. I was always the guy to invite people over after hours to have parties in my house. I lived in like a studio apartment just off of Granville Street on Granville and Drake. 1330 Hornby, what's up? That was like my first solo apartment. And there's always extra booze left over at my house. And but I always made it to work. I always I didn't show up on time, but I did show up. And oh, hey buddy. Sorry, Jerry's barking at me. I'm just gonna grab him. One sec. Come here. He ran away from me. Where does the story go next? After the warehouse was going really well. They were opening up another warehouse. So I started working between two warehouses. The Granville warehouse and the Hastings warehouse. So I was part of the opening team on the Hastings warehouse as well as the Granville warehouse. By that point, I was basically drinking every day, having parties every day, going out, having fun, and it was wild. But it actually got the best of me, and I showed up. I started to show up late for my Sunday day shifts. The first shifts that I worked at the Granville warehouse, I started working night shifts every other day, so it was really hard for me to show up for Sunday daytime shifts. And eventually I got fired from the Granville warehouse for showing up for too many late shifts, because it wasn't fair. I was showing up for shifts late, and I wasn't getting fired because I don't mean this in a cocky way at all. I'm not trying to flex or anything. I was bringing in a lot of business, and I was bringing in a really good vibe and helping organize events and things like that. So it was tough for them to fire me, but eventually it got to the point where I just wasn't showing up for shifts, and they had to fire me. So then I was working at the Hastings warehouse, and at around that time as well, I started getting into nightclubs, and that was, again, it took on this was years and years of progression of drinking, but I would say nightclubs is where, if you don't binge drink at restaurants, then you learn how to do it at nightclubs, and they are like playgrounds for alcoholics and just people who want to party. I think I'm actually going to stop there for tonight, as it's been about half an hour. And I'll save the nightclub stories for tomorrow's session. And because that's sort of, that is really where the core of my alcoholism took shape, and the end of it as well. It was the beginning and the end of it. Because I quit nightclubs, and I haven't drank since. So I will tell the rest of that story tomorrow. Did anyone have any questions or anything they wanted to share before I sign off for the evening? Thank you. I see there's some people who stuck around for this whole thing, so thank you so much for listening to me. Do you have any questions or anything anyone wanted to communicate?
Listen to music personalized to you. YouTube Music Premium. Start a 1-month free trial.
If not, that's okay too. I wasn't sure what to expect when I was going to talk about my struggles like this. Hey, you're welcome, Steph. It's, again, I don't even know if Sarah's my fiance. I don't even think I've told her this story in such great detail. There's some things that I even left out of the older days, like when I was talking about moving into a house for the first time at 17 on my own. There's some crazy stories that happened there, and I don't feel comfortable enough yet, but maybe I'll talk to you guys about those tomorrow, because there's some good ones. But thanks for allowing me a space to be so open. And this is perfect timing, because it looks like Sarah just got home. So I'm going to sign off. Thanks for sticking around. I really appreciate it. It was a great first stream, and I am streaming tomorrow at 6 as well. So love everybody. Be happy. I'll see you soon. Bye.